Hello and welcome to my second video featuring how to create a database too. If you saw my first video, I showed you how to create leader stats and add or subtract currency. In this video, I'll be showing you how to save that currency onto a database using session data. I like it better than a normal database because this way you can save everything during your session, and about every 60 seconds or whatever time you want to set it to, 2 minutes or every 3 minutes, whatever time basically you set it to, all the session data directly goes into your database for you. As you're going to notice as well, the database is created on a separate module script from your leaderstats script. I like this as well since it keeps the game's internal function separate from the database and it looks less cluttered. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is go over to server storage. Let's go ahead and add a new module script. You name this basically whatever you want. Just make sure that whatever you name it, you remember, because you're going to need this later to require it in all the scripts that you're going to be using it in. Let's go ahead and name this player handler. And right here in the module script, I like to name the module basically by the module name. So I'm going to put up there in the top local player handler and return player handler. Make some spaces on the top. This is where we're going to put in our variables. First thing we're going to need is to get the player. So local player service equals game get service players. Okay, now let's go ahead and write local Datastore service. This is what we're going to be calling for the Datastore. Equals game get service Datastore service. Okay, then we're going to need to give it a name for a Datastore. So we're going to say, let's say player data. Local player data equals Datastore service get Datastore player data. Next item, I usually for all my games like to add a little autosave, an automatic save feature. Just call it local autosave interval equals whatever time you like. I usually do 1 minute, so every minute it saves the information of the game. And let's begin in here in the module script. Let's go ahead and start by first setting another variable. Let's put the session data. This is where all the information temporarily is going to be saved before it gets to the database. And now let's type in a function, local function setup player data player. Okay, the player joins, this is going to run, and that's how we're going to retrieve the player. We'll write that later. Let's go ahead and get a player user ID in case the player ever changes his name, etc. His player ID never gets changed, so if he has any information or any saved data, even if it changes his name, his data will still load. I need to set local data as well, just in case if there is no data it does an error. And we're going to need a pcall, so local success error equals pcall function. Alright, we're going to get players information, so data equals player data get async player user ID. There we go. So now that we have that function set up, the pcall's all set, and we're getting data from player data, your player user ID. Next thing we want to do is if success, and there's data, then session data player user ID equals data. If data, then now we're setting it to make sure that if it's successful and there's data, we're setting data to section ID, section data and player user ID, I mean. And if data, we want to go ahead and set from the last video, all we did was added a gold value, so let's go ahead and set that up. Player leaderstats.gold.value equals data.gold. So what we're doing here is basically setting up a pcall, get basically information from the database from this player user ID. If it's successful and there is data, then the section data player user ID becomes that data. So if there's data, then we're going to go ahead and call that player leader stats gold value is going to equal to data.gold. It'll make a little bit more sense now as we continue to code, because if this is only if the player obviously has some data. If he doesn't have data, then that's where this comes in. Else session data player user ID equals, and create a table. Since we only have one, which is gold, it's the only value we're saving up to now from the last video, we're going to put in gold equals player dot leader stats dot gold dot value, and we're going to put a little print here, new player data. Okay, so when the player joins, it's going to run this function. It's going to set the player user ID to player.user ID, which we got the player off of the function we're going to create down here below on player added. Local data is going to be blank, so there's an error. We made a function here that basically is, so it's wrapped in a pcall that data equals player data get a sync from the player user ID. So it's going to look for the player user ID in player data, which is our database, and if it finds information over here, it's going to say if success and there's data, then you're going to set section data, which is this table, which is a local section data, player user ID equals data. So it's grabbing the data from the database and it's putting it into our section data. If there's data, then we're calling basically our leader stats gold value, player leader stats gold dot value, and we're setting it to the data gold dot gold, which that is set the first time the player ever joins the game, obviously, and it's set right over here. So if the player has no data, it's going to go to else, it's going to go to section data player user ID equals this table, and this table is going to set gold, which is how we set data.gold right over here. It's going to set gold equals player leader stats gold.value, and obviously the first time the player joins, it's going to be printing down here below new player data. So right underneath here, let's go ahead and set up our functions. Let's set up a local function for save data and also an outside save data, just to split it up. So let's type in local function save data for the player. Let's go ahead and set up the local player user ID equals player.user ID. Let's wrap it in a p call. So let's say local success equals p call function. And let's type in player data set async player user ID session data player user ID and ends. Okay. So this is going to be a local function that we can use with basically our autosave every 60 seconds to run this. And what that's going to do is going to grab basically player data, set async, player user ID, and the session data for the player user ID. So this is how the auto feature later on is going to work. Now let's set one up just in case some of you like to autosave manually. We're going to set up a function player handler dot save data player. This is so you can run it from any script in your game that you can manually save the game if you need to. If not, then the top's just going to be fine. That's also going to be the one that we're going to be using when the player leaves. This is just in case you want to outsource to another script and save it manually. We're going to be basically copying this here. We're going to need the player user ID. We're going to need the pcall and this information right here. So we're just basically copy and pasting right over. It's basically the same code, same function. It's just this one can be called from another script. That's the only difference. Alright, and then we're going to finally write another function. This is going to be the one that we use to change values in our database or in a section data. So we're going to type in function player handler dots change value. We're going to need the player, the name of the value we're changing, and the value. Again, we're going to go ahead and copy the player user ID, type it right there, and we're going to type if session data player user ID, then so we're checking if the section data player user ID has information. If it does, then session data player user ID name equals value. and that's it. So basically, whenever you type this function in any of your scripts, player handler change value, you're going to be sending over the name of the object that you're changing the value on and the amount that it's being changed, and that's going to automatically change the section data for you and update it. Simple enough. And right under this, we're going to go ahead and add the player added function. So player service dot player added connect set up player data. And we're going to do also one for player removing. And this is going to run save data. And there we go. This should automatically run setup player data when the player first joins, and when the player removes itself or the player leaves, it's going to run save data, which is going to save all the section data into the database. Now we're going to go ahead and type in local function autosave. And then here we're going to do while wait autosave interval do. So basically that variable that we wrote up here is 60 seconds. This while wait function is going to wait every 60 seconds before running this code. And we're going to loop for I player in pairs game.players get players do. We're going to go ahead and save data for all the players every 60 seconds. There we go. And that should be it. Let's go ahead and test it out, see if it works. No errors so far. Let's see, button from the last, yeah, it's working. So as we can see, gold is being changed every time I click. And as you can see, it has not saved anything, and that's because we have not set, basically, let's see here, which one is it? It's a script. Here we go. So right here, this is where we basically have to set now a player handler. So let's go ahead and type local player handler equals required game dot server storage wait for child player handler. There we go. Now let's copy player handler and put it right underneath this here. So we want to type in player handler dot change value. We're going to need to send the player what we are changing, which is the gold, and right over here the value, which obviously is going to be player leader stats gold.value. This is going to head and change that value. So after that's already been changed, we're just sending it over to our section data to make sure that it updates gold to the current value. Now let's press play. Ooh, an error. Let's see what this is. Oh, forgot to publish it. Let me go ahead and let's publish it anywhere. Sorry about that, forgot to publish the game. Let's see if it works now. Boom, see there? It's working. New player data has been loaded. This is my first time using the database. And now I'm going to push this button here, add myself maybe 40 gold. If we wait those 60 seconds, did I add a print to the autosave? No, I did not. It's just going to automatically save and not tell me. Okay. Well, then let's just leave. And we have it at 40. So now we left the game, we've disconnected, wait a couple of seconds, go back in, and bingo, there you go, save the value. So there you have it, guys. That's how you create basic DataStore2. All you have to do is basically anything that you want to add on to it, just go to the player handler, and right over here where it says data equals get a sync, right down here, here we go, player leader stats gold.value equals data.gold. Say you wanted to add silver, then you would have to go into your core script obviously and add a new instance called an int value or whatever it is, and then name it silver with the value and put it into the parent stats. Once your core script has that, you come back over here and then you type player.leaderstats.silver.value equals data.silver. Then you have to do the same down here. You have to type silver equals player.leader stats dot silver dot value, and we need a semicolon here or it's going to give you an error. So every other line you got to make sure you add this little semicolon here so it separates it. You got to remember as well that if you try to play the game now, it's going to try to look for this information. It's not going to be in there. So I'll show you right now. It's going to error, or it should error. There it goes. Silver is not a valid member of leader stats. So you're gonna basically stop it, go back in. There's a little trick I do. This is before I actually created an admin panel. I just go ahead and right over here where it says if success and data, then take this information out, right click on it and cut it. So what you're doing is you're skipping it from loading any information, and then you're just going to set blank information. So now if I run this, it's not going to error. It's going to set it blank. Oh, no, it's not. Wait a minute. Or maybe I just have to remove. No, hold on a second. Was it supposed to error like that? Maybe I have to remove if, yeah, and then just keep the section data. How did I do this? How did I do this before? Maybe if I add this, I'll comment this ends and press play. Nope. Oh, I see why. I don't have this set. Okay, you gotta go to your core scripts, of course, and set this equals instance.new init value clicks for dot name equals silver, clicks for dot value equals 0, clicks for dot parents equals stats. Yeah, so obviously if I don't have silver added, it's gonna error and it's not gonna let me reset the database. So alright, now we have it added here. So that's all set. And now whether it's success and data, it's gonna have data from the last database. So basically you're just gonna remove from the else to the section data player user ID data. That way it doesn't try to load whatever information it has. It's going to go ahead and overwrite gold, and it's going to add in a new value called silver. See if that works. And there you have it. No errors. New player data in there. And now we have a new leader stats called silver. So now you can go back into your player handler and go ahead and add back that. So now when you join in, the database will work perfectly. So every time you add one of these values, you got to make sure that when you're going to go back into the game to test it, that you go ahead and delete this portion of it temporarily so that it can set the new values that you've already set. So if you have any questions, feel free to make some comments down below. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll be seeing you hopefully soon. I should be releasing a little bit more advanced database 2 videos in the future. Thank you. Have a good day.